Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so this is book 421. If the perception of one mind by another mind be postulated, we would have to assume an endless number of them, and the result would be confusion of memory. Okay. And then I do have Carrera. So his translation of the sutra is the same, and his commentary is, this sutra provides another proof of the non-sentient nature of the mind. It is kind of a buck stops here argument for those who would propose that there is one aspect of the mind that specializes in watching, while another goes through the various thought processes. Pardon me. Let's suppose that one part of our mind witnesses another part of our mind. This means when I smell a honeysuckle, there is a part of my mind that registers the flower, the scent, the sniffing, and still another aspect of my mind that watches all of this. But we know that we know. If this is true, if we are conscious of one part of the mind watching another, there must be an additional facet of the mind to watch the watcher. Perhaps this too is true. The mind is a subtle and mysterious creature. Maybe there is still another aspect of the mind that serves as the witness. But again, we know that we know. Is there yet another aspect of the mind? Could this be how perception takes place? It's not really possible. We would be overwhelmed by an infinite number of parts of the mind, each behaving like a tiny ego, watching one another. Which mini ego would store memories? And how could we access those memories? Without access to memory, it is impossible to learn or think coherently. Logic compels us to stop somewhere. That somewhere needs to be outside the processes of thought. We enter a search with a Purusha, not as an analyzer, creative thinker, or questioner, but simply as the unchanging, unwavering, non-judgmental witness. Again, we are reminded that the consciousness that seems to be an inherent property of the mind is but a reflection of the unbounded, unconditioned consciousness that is the Purusha. So there is an author that I started reading when I was in college, and I don't know if you guys have experienced it, but a couple of times in my life I've read books by people or authors who have almost literally changed my life in that they put into words something that I was going through, and all of a sudden there was this immediate click and I recognized it, or they opened up doors to something that made me think differently. And this particular author used to talk about the watcher in the mind, and the observer. And it turns, I ended up reading much, if not all, of what she wrote. And she was big on Sufi and the Eastern philosophies and that kind of thing, although that wasn't apparent in the first couple of books I read. So one of the things that I'm not so clear about is, why can't Purusha be considered the watcher? Because it makes so much sense to me that there is an observer in the mind. Because otherwise, how do you catch yourself when you're spiraling into a pattern that you're working hard to recognize and say, wait, I can change this? So what is the difference between the part of me that catches the spiral and stops it, or catches something good and says, keep doing this, What's the difference between that and Purusha?
I think I lost something in the translation. That was always my impression. That consciousness is just sitting back, always watching. There's the deciding factor, though, is the mind deciding. But there's a witness, which is the Purusha, I thought, no?
I think so.
Now I'm even, sorry, I'm a little bit more lost.
Did I miss something in the translation? What's your trivia?
Well, maybe I, well, okay. this is me in my brain. If Purusha is the steady, constant thing, the thing that is always there, and the thing that it sounds like it is universal, and that each of us have access to it. I keep on coming up with this picture of you got your mind that's moving away, moving around, doing things, perceiving, whatever, et cetera, et cetera. Then you got your consciousness, which is your watcher, watching this stuff go on. And you can use your consciousness to say, oh, I want to stop going in this direction. Really, let's just turn a different corner. And that always in reference, in other words, the Purusha is universal and it's referential, but it's not the thing that is acting on your consciousness or the mind's activity.
So that's the buddhi, the decider. You have the there are four parts of the mind. You have the manas, which is like the filter from which you take the internal and push it to the external. You take the external, bring it to the internal. And then you have the buddhi, which is the decider, or like the sort of like the conscience that says like this is something good to do and this is something not good to do. Then you have the ego, which is the identity maker, the identity protector. And then you have the subconscious mind. So people can get caught in thinking that buddhi, the wisdom, is the essential self, but it's actually not. It's just the more subtle aspect of the mind. And the self is Purusha, it just sits and witnesses. There's no judgment.
So the self is Purusha?
Yes. And then that deciding factor is just an element of our mind-body vehicle, which is material. The mind is material. It's subtler than the body, but it's still material.
Uh-huh.
Oh, okay. What sutra were we doing again? 419?
This was 421.
420. Okay. Let me see.
I think maybe like what it's coming to my head is like the self with a capital S is the Purusha. Remember?
Right.
We were talking about self with the little s, and then sutras ago we were talking about the little I and the capital I, and about drawing the line to connect the dot through the I. So like we're just removing the ego, and then that's capital S self just becomes the Purusha.
Right. Okay, so this is what Gyanasvara says. This sounds like what you're saying, Pam. Mind is not self-illuming because it is made of the stuff, the three gunas, just like the photos are made of the ink, the three kinds.
Wait, Amanda, is this 21?
No, I'm skipping backwards the sutra.
Oh, okay, because I think you read this yesterday. Okay, that's fine.
It informs what we're talking about. Yeah. Mind is made of the three gunas and is not itself consciousness. Rather, consciousness operates through the mind. Mind is witnessed by consciousness. When the consciousness operates through the mind, it is also the witness of the mind. When consciousness, Purusha, is witnessing the mind is the object being witnessed. This is a key point here, so that this is not mere philosophy, but a practical part of the subtlest meditation processes. At some point, the mind itself is seen as an object of observation to be set aside with non-attachment, just like the many surface-level thought patterns of daily life are set aside in the earlier, grosser stages of meditation. Now the instrument of thinking itself is being seen and transcended in the pursuit of the direct experience of pure consciousness. Awareness of mind and witness don't coexist. It is not possible to be aware of an object in the mind field at the same time. There is an awareness of one's true nature as the illuminator of the mind. If there is no endless chain of minds, if one mind were illumined by another as its master, then there would be an endless and absurd progression of cognitions as well as confusion. The yogi only seeks pure consciousness. Since the mind is not self-illuminating and there is not endless chain of minds, the yogi seeks only to have the direct experience of pure consciousness or Purusha. So I think what he's saying is like we're mistakenly thinking that Purusha is another mind observing the mind, but it's not. Consciousness is different. It observes in a different way than the mind can observe, than the material mind can observe the material world. If that makes sense. That might not make any sense.
So
Is Purusha an observer only, not a doer kind of thing? It doesn't. Once we get to action and doing, that's buddhi or ego, or that's other
like,
parts of the mind.
It does in a way that it animates, but it's deeper than what we think necessarily of doing. It's like he uses the analogy way back in the beginning of the microchip. It's like the consciousness is the power source to the computer, and then the mind is the processor of the computer. The prana that comes from the consciousness is the electricity that animates the computer chip. I don't know how to answer your question. It's like it's separate. It's separate from the material. It enters the material periodically to take form, animate a body, sort of play in the fake material world, but it's not contingent upon the material. The material is contingent upon it, but it is not contingent upon the material.
It's what lives on after you lose this body.
Well, the problem with that is, like, you know, the layers, the koshas, they say that you drag some of the koshas, which are material, into your next body with you, like the most subtle layers of it. So the Purusha doesn't exit the material completely until there is enlightenment, like real pure enlightenment, and there's that decision to let go of the body and not come back again. So that's what are the moksha, they call it nirvana, some traditions call it, like the idea of reabsorbing back into or reunion with the divine again. And then you don't take more forms. But then they get bored and they take more forms again anyway. That's what they say. It's like this endless cycle. I'm being ridiculous. I'm not bored, but, you know, it's just they want to have relational things again. And you can't be relational. You can't have relations if there's only one.
Yeah.
So then consciousness sort of splits and is able to observe itself. So it can have relation to something else. I feel like I'm being very vague. Let's keep reading because I can't. I feel like I can't.
I think it's funny because I don't have, like, you all have this very, like, the Jnani mind where, like, you just want to ask a lot of questions. I'm like, the sky is purple today, great, and I'll go. That's how I, like, grew, and it's good and bad for me, but, like, if I care about it, I'll research it, but if not, I'll just be like, fine, the sky is blue, but
Except,
I mean, the sky is purple, whatever. But when I'm, like, for something like this, when it, and I love that he says logic compels us to stop somewhere in Carrera's book. Because, like, for me, this part is like when I never learned religion. I was never in any structure of learning religion. So when I learned religion, it was kind of just like piecemeal, like picking it up at the dinner table and picking it up here. And I was like, okay, whatever. but it's scary to learn religion because you're like, what the heck are these people talking about? And this person is that person, but then it's this person's son, but then it's this person, like it's such a crazy story when you don't learn it.
Yeah.
And so I would just sit there and be like, amen.
Whatever.
And so and I would just be like, okay, like it is, like, to me it is what it is, like that's the story. I never was like, but wait a minute, why did that person do, like, because it's not that I didn't care, it's just like it just was like meant to be accepted, like there was no logic to it. And so like for me with the Purusha, I do care about Purusha, so this is why I sit and do this work. But it's just like, okay, this is what they're telling me it is. Fine. Like, just feel like that's what it is. But one day it'll make sense to me. Like, maybe never in this lifetime. I don't know.
That's so funny, Pam. I used to get sent to the office all the time in Sunday school because I would be like, but why? That doesn't make any sense. But why? And they'd be like, you have to have faith. And I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. Explain it to me. And they would make me go to the office and get in trouble. Yes. I couldn't process it. It was like, tell me why. And that's why I like yoga so much. It's like you can directly experience the Purusha. It's like this is a thing that's inside of you, It made all that stuff I learned in Catholic school make sense, actually.
Well, now I understand why I didn't go, because I would have been probably a troublemaker because I
possibly.
Was like it's whatever. But I feel like that's what we're supposed to be doing now. It's like just have faith in the Purusha. And it's like I don't want, but I'm sure like I'm just saying, like, it may not make sense now, but maybe in the next sutra it'll make sense, or maybe the next time we read this through, or maybe when we sit and meditate for 20 minutes today.
It's when we sit and meditate, yeah. It's like Purusha can't be experienced if we're asking questions, actually.
Right.
It's like pulling us out of the experience. So
right.
The Gyanis have a hard time. It took them a long time to get to the place there.
It's like it's not a wisdom part of it. It's like the divine part, I guess.
Mm-hmm. So having said that, do you want to read the next sutra, or do you want to just go right to meditation?
Well, I'm a Gyani, so I definitely want to read the next sutra.
Yes, read the next one.
All right, so this is 422. Let's see. Okay. The mind stuff, when colored by both seer and seeing, understands everything. And then Carrera,
422.
Yeah, 422. And then Carrera says, when the unchanging consciousness of the Purusha. Sorry?
No, never mind. Ignore me. I don't know what's.
Okay, 422. When the unchanging consciousness of the Purusha reflects on the mind stuff, the function of cognition, buddhi, becomes possible. This sutra explains the foundation of individual consciousness. Buddhi, also called Mahat, is the first of the evolutionary manifestations of Prakriti. Being the most pure and subtle aspect of matter, it has a special nearness to the Purusha, which allows it to reflect the consciousness of the Purusha clearly. This is what gives Buddhi the appearance of self-consciousness. The countless minds in the universe are born of the reflection of the one self. The following analogy may help demonstrate how this is so. You've just washed and waxed your car. Soon afterwards, a brief thunderstorm rumbles through. It is a brief storm, and a few minutes later, the sunlight reemerges. On the hood of your car, you notice many droplets of water. Each and every drop reflects the entire globe of the sun. Though we can view the sun in each drop, we cannot state that the totality of the sun is contained in that droplet of water. Nor can we say that the sun is limited by being reflected in the droplets. Yet the light we see and the light we use to perceive the reflected sun is the light of the sun itself. Each mind is like a droplet of water capable of reflecting light. The mind is held together by the ego, just as each drop of water is held together by surface tension. Okay.
Here's another one. Like the reflection on a mirror, think of the reflection on a mirror. There appears to be something there, but try as you will, you cannot physically grasp the objects that appear in the mirror. They are there, yet they are not there. However, by virtue of that reflection, you are able to know, to experience. It is somewhat like that with consciousness or Purusha. It provides the light or life force so that the subtlest aspect of mind stuff can operate. Yet, like with the mirror, it cannot itself be grasped and is unchanging. It is as if the consciousness, though unchanged, wraps itself around the subtle object called mind, and in turn, all of the objects of the mind. This has been described in the beginning of the Yoga Sutras as the essential obstacle to be transcended or disidentified with. The tool must be set aside by realizing the extremely subtle nature of how the consciousness allows the mind field to be active. It is evident that to know the absolute unchanging truth or reality, one must let go of even this finest instrument. Through that letting go, the experience of the unchanging eternal consciousness is there, standing alone. And this is the experience of self-realization. It is the meaning of resting in one's true nature that is introduced in the beginning of the Yoga Sutras. The analogies help, huh?
Hmm. So if you have the mind, which is dealing with basically perception and some kind of organization, and then it shifts to the buddhi, which is the intellect and understanding, right? It's the thing that helps to organize whatever the mind is shifting into you.
Yeah.
And then you have your ego, which is like that's your self-identity. And that puts your own almost personal stamp on everything that you're receiving.
Yeah.
But ultimately behind it all is Purusha, which is, well, you said it before, it's self with a capital S, right? Pam, I think you said. Where does the subconscious fit into this? Is this just
So the
the underlying
subconscious
stuff like the karma?
subconscious is the receptacle of all the impressions that come through the mind on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm.
So that get filtered through the buddhi and the ego, that come in through the manas, through the filter. It's like anything that you perceive during the day gets stored in the subconscious mind, but even the subconscious mind is separate from the Purusha.
Right.
And yes, that's how karma acts out.
Right.
You know, I find it so fascinating that this was written so long ago, and they knew so much about the psychology of the mind as well as the physical aspects of the brain. I mean, they don't talk about it in that way, but when we put our modern science ideas onto what they're, kind of layer it onto what they're saying, it's just amazing to me that this was written so long ago with all of this knowledge.
My teachers say we're devolving.
Evolving.
Yeah, that like the whole idea of us evolving is actually backwards, like according to the Vedas. And like they even find in archaeological digs things that don't make any sense to like the current theory that they're trying to smash everything into. They say that this is Kali Yuga. Like there were 4 other times periods before this where people had more knowledge, more wisdom, and better technology, and all that. And like things just keep getting darker and darker, and ignorance is falling on everyone, and less people are aware of this stuff, and less people are enlightened. And we're like in a real time of darkness. Everyone argues what the time period is. There are all these like Vedic mathematicians that are arguing like when Kali Yuga is going to end. Some people say that we're actually in Dwarpa Yuga in the ascending period. I don't know what to believe. It feels like we're in Kali Yuga. But they say that like there was technology back then. I mean, like if you look at Ayurveda, there was so much wisdom, and before it was even written down, it was passed on from person to person in an oral tradition. You know, it was for thousands of years. All this stuff was passed on in an oral tradition. It just kind of makes sense.
I mean, it feels like what we call modern science has only just begun to catch up with Ayurveda.
Right. I mean, like, even if you look at the Middle Ages, like, that was really dark, right? That was super duper dark and full of ignorance. And, like, there was a time before that. Like, people always reference, they're like, no, ancient people were, like, so sickly and they would die at the age of 30. And, like, actually, you're talking about a couple hundred years ago. Like, you're talking about really ancient people. They would live like some past 100 because they had like these incredible herbs and they were connected to nature and they had really, really good medicine back then. Like they even did surgery in Ayurveda. They did like, what is it called? Like the implantation of the, like when you can't get pregnant, and they did C-sections. They did, I keep reading this stuff and it like blows my mind. It just blows my mind. They would do surgery and they would know about the entire nervous system and cut around it and not cause any nerve damage. Like you think like what was surgery like back then? It was probably barbaric. Like no, it was actually so refined. That blows my mind. Like that's where acupuncture comes out of, because they had that knowledge of, it's just crazy.
Right.
Well, my ego, if I'm gonna believe in reincarnation, believes I was part of these teachings. So I do feel like I devolved because I feel stupider than I was in my past lifetime. I feel like maybe Amanda wrote the sutras.
Oh, shut up. No, I didn't. That would be nice, but I'm still like coming upon these impressions of like, whoa, really? Wow. Yeah. If I did, I probably wouldn't be here.
Gotta keep coming back to teach us.
Oh, I'm not enlightened, honey. Not yet. Not yet. You're very sweet, though. I just have really good teachers.
I'm just being silly. I'm just like, well, of course, if I reincarnated, I was definitely smarter in past lives.
I think that too. I had a psychic telling me I was teaching this in like the Middle East, and it's like, yeah, I probably knew a lot more then. I think that was.
I'm gonna give myself more credit than I deserve. That's just how I am. That's all my self-worth and self-love and self-confidence.
That's funny.
I'm going to be a golden retriever, so that's my.
Oh, yeah. I'm coming back to Kramer, who's not feeling well, but we should probably move into.
Okay.
Yes. Okay, so somebody else has to lead this.
Oh. I can lead us through a few rounds of alternate nostril breathing and set the tone.
Okay.
Sitting up nice and tall, taking 3 breaths through both nostrils. Start to lengthen the breath. Fill up the low belly. As you exhale, pull the belly button to the spine, let all the air out. Start to relax the face. And then pulling your right hand, letting your left hand rest in your lap. Right thumb to close right nostril, right ring finger to close left nostril. Closing your right, inhaling through the left. Close left, exhale right. Inhale right. Close, exhale left. Inhale left. Close, exhale right. Inhale right. Close, exhale left. Inhale left. Close, exhale right. Inhale right. Close, exhale left. Taking 2 more rounds or more if you'd want it, and I'll set the timer for 20 minutes, making sure to exhale on the left nostril to finish the breathing. Bringing hands together in front of your heart. Namaste.
Namaste.
Have a beautiful, stormy day, everybody.
You too. Take care, everyone.
Yep, stay safe.
Have a good one.
Thanks.
See you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.